Hello and welcome to 1909, January to June, roughly speaking. I'm saying roughly speaking because honestly there are so many ships classes and ships ordered in 1909. There are 2 years which are like this in this period that I have split it up into two parts, and there is going to be one part coming out this morning and another part coming out later on. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you look forward to part 2. So let's start off with the first of the next generation of British battleships. And here is the thing. As I was saying at the end of 1908, the British had taken a bit of a gap and then built Bellerophon. They'd then taken arguably more information and function into the St. Vincent class. So in a way, they have built 3 classes, Dreadnought being class, then Bellerophon, then the St. Vincent's, which are each iterations on each other. They are a little bit of testing, improvements, build more. A little bit of testing, improvements, build more. And they do run into each other. But then they take another bit of a break, because whilst Vanguard, the last of the first group, is laid down in April 1908, HMS Neptune is not laid down till January 1909, which means there has been both Bellerophon going through in-service commissioning testing, and Dreadnought in full-up operations for 3 years at this point. Let's see how Neptune changes. Well, you'll notice they have gone with the offset wing turret, so immediately I am rather annoyed at whoever was doing this testing. I think they were obviously more concerned with trying to find an opium supply. Sorry, no, that's a bit rude, but it's true. They have got at the aft a perfect idea of what to do. They have a super firing turret. They have one turret over the other. That is brilliant. I'm incredibly happy with that. I'm ecstatic about that. That means you've got 4 guns which can cover the rear if your enemy tries to turn your stern. And you've still got wing turrets that are supposed to cover your forward. I just don't see that as actually viable. But see, if you've got that rear, you know what to do. You could have replicated that at the front. And if you really insist on having a 5th turret, you can then have that centre line mounted. And there you go, there's your broadside of 10 guns. Instead of what you've actually in effect got, a broadside of 8 guns. And only really 2 firing forward. However, you've still got your 21 knots of speed. You're displacing 20,000 tons. Your armour has, well, let's put it this way. HMS Dreadnought had a belt of between 4 and 11 inches. Which is nice, but now the belt on Neptune is between 8 and 10 inches. So yes, it's a little bit thinner in parts, but in most of it, it's a lot thicker. They've got bulkheads, 5 and 8 inches, so some of them are thinner to save strength, but the deck is between 1 1/4 and 3 inches, so that's half an inch thicker at least. Barbettes are thicker on average. Turrets are thicker on average. She's gone from having 3-pounder, 76mm secondaries, to having 4-inch secondaries. And they've got rid of a couple of torpedo tubes. We can all be happy about that. Oh, yes. And to get her 21 knot speed, she now has 25,000 shaft horsepower. But still, 18 boilers, although these are Yarrow rather than Babcock and Wilcox. Now, you'll notice on this little note there is a mention of Colossus. But the Colossus class are actually a separate class in most historians' opinions. Because what happens is they order Neptune, and then, in typical British fashion, she is commissioned, she's ordered in January 1909. They wait, they're doing more testing. Remember, St. Vincent commissions, no, the Bellerophons are all commissioned by May 1909, and Colossus and Hercules aren't ordered till July 1909. They have gone through a lot more testing with a lot more ships, and suddenly a variation again on the Neptune. And you start to see a pattern the British are doing, because the British are building these ships, and as we already noticed the previous year in 1908, there isn't exactly anyone else operating them. So the British are having to work out not only how you operate them, but how you theoretically will operate them against each other. Not just against dreadnoughts, pre-dreadnoughts, but against each other. And you can only do that once you start to have enough of them to play around with that. I know it sounds terrible to say the words playing around. I know lots of people get upset with me about using that phrase, but let's be honest, war games and exercises, especially when you have no idea what the brand new equipment's going to do, are pretty much go and use it till you break it, or till you work out how to use it properly. It's always the theoretical, but that's not usually practical. Also this year, the British order the Indefatigable class battle cruiser. Yes! They're ordering their second generation of battle cruisers already. You are allowed to get slightly worried about the British. In fact, most people probably should be getting worried about the British at this point. They have commissioned Invincible in March 1909, Inflexible in October 1908, and Indomitable in June 1908. Now, I know they're called the Invincible class, and Invincible is the lead ship of her class, but she was delayed in construction. So they've now had 3 battle cruisers running around the world for between 6 months and a year, fully commissioned. They've been testing them in water and using them for about a year. And now they order HMS Indefatigable. Arguably an involved Invincible class. She has 8 12-inch guns. Again, you have the off-centered wing turrets. I just apologize to the world for having to look at them, honestly. But 43,000 indicated horsepower. Remember, that's different from shaft horsepower. 31 Babcock and Wilcox boilers driving 4 Parsons direct drive steam turbines. Can get a speed of 25.8 knots. So that's racing, and it's almost a 5-knot advantage over the battleships in service at the time. Which, of course, the British know, because they're the only ones operating Dreadnought battleships at this point. And they're building battlecruisers as well. And you can almost argue that it's sensible than building battlecruisers, because battlecruisers are the commerce warfare side that are going to theoretically be able to avoid fighting anyone they don't want to. So it's kind of a safety measure to build them, because if you rush too much in your early battleships, you could end up with battleships which are hopelessly outmatched by your opponent's battleships, and remember, battleships have to slog it out. Britain's thinking about a global war. Fighting Germany is lovely. If Britain ends up fighting Germany, that's wonderful. We can block off the Channel, and then we have to block off the North Sea. Possibly invade Norway to do it properly, but that's what we do. And distant blockade, and then fine. But that's if you fight Germany. What happens if you fight any of the other potential options? If you end up in a war versus Russia and France? I know we have the Entente Cordiale coming along, but let's be honest, it hasn't been that long since you were pointing guns at them. And in certain parts of the world, you are still pointing guns at them, despite it being in a cordial manner. And then there is an ally, Japan, good friend. But the trouble is, you've got America and Japan doing something weird in the Far East already. Could have to watch that. The Royal Navy uses its battle fleet to coordinate the choke points. Its battle cruisers for the economic warfare. That's what it's thinking about. And that's what this ship's for. And there's no surprise that they're going to be called, well, eventually, Indefatigable, New Zealand, and Australia. Here is what the Americans are building this year. The Florida class. Now, before you ask, no, it doesn't come with a sun lounger. But it's cool. Come on. The Americans are already looking at coal-fired oil with superheating and oil burners added into them, boilers. They are talking about 28,000 shaft horsepower. Let's go back. Okay, 43,000 indicated horsepower. Right, but HMS Neptune, 25,000 shaft horsepower. The Americans are going big. They've got a cruising range. They're going for a lot of firepower. And they can. And this is one of the interesting things. They have gone for 10 12-inch guns in 5 twin turrets. And look at them. They're all centerline mounted. Yes. Yes, I know. They have 2 turrets, one super firing forward, and they have a super firing turret aft. And yes, they do have that weird turret aft in front of the aftermost turret, which can therefore not fire backwards, because it will actually have to whack the aftermost turret out the way somehow, and it can't do that. But barring the origami-defying stern turrets, which are, again, a lovely idea on paper, but let's be honest, in reality, if you've got a turret that close to you on the same level, and you're trying to fire, and you're pointed like that, and then the target's over there, you're turning around, bang, bang, that's going to cause a lot of disruption, a lot of vibrations, and you don't want to be an EVA turret. It's just going to be noisy. Especially you don't want to be in this turret. But they're thinking. And I will consistently be getting at this. We talk a lot about the naval race in terms of construction with the Germans. What you probably don't realise is that there's an intellectual naval race also going on, which is not with the Germans. Not with the Germans at all. The Germans we will get into, but intellectually stimulating their designs are not. In fact, as often as not, when they launch their ships, the Royal Navy's already constructing ships which are better than them. what the Americans will worry about, the Kawashi class. Now, these are interesting because on paper they sound pretty dreadnoughty. They have an all 12-inch gun armament. However, 4 of their 12 inches are BL 12 inches Mark 11, I think, which are the twin turrets fore and aft. They are 50 caliber. 8 are Ellswick Ordnance Company 45 caliber 12-inch guns. So they don't actually have same all-round, all-big gun armament. But they have 25,000 shaft horsepower. They have a top speed of 21 knots. They have 2 steam turbine sets. They displace nearly 22,000 tons in normal. They are pretty darn cute ships, and they've got a good armor profile. They are certainly something which you cannot afford to ignore, even if you are in a dreadnought. Although, possibly not in this one, because in this one, all your 12-inch guns are the same 45 caliber. So, you know what they're going to do. Possibly why they went with a 450 cal, just, you know, try and give them a bit of range in case. But, yeah. But, unfortunately, here is what the real stars are doing, and this is my point at this time. So, introducing the treble gun turret, we have the Italians. Now, is this a navy which is going to be is building to fight outnumbered? Is this a navy which is building to fight when it's going to have always less vessels than its opponent? No. Because it's building to fight the French, who we've talked about are building the Dantons. So, frankly, the Italians are laughing and going, "What has happened to you? You used to be cool. We are now going to need to turn and face the Austro-Hungarians because, honestly, you are no challenge anymore. I'm sorry." And the Austro-Hungarians, who at this point also have pre-dreadnoughts. So, admittedly, some very nice Rositsky semi-dreadnoughts about to be talked about, but, you know, leave that to one side. No! The people with the treble turrets should not be the Italians, yet they're the ones with the treble turrets. Yet think about it, if you were the German Navy, the Italians produce a treble turret. We are talking about 1909. They are having it. Other navies will go for multiples beyond 2. Now, for the Royal Navy, which is building a mass number of hulls, having a twin turret makes sense. You're not spending the money on the turrets and the guns. You've got it spread about those guns spread around more hulls. But if you're going to be in less hulls, then up your hitting power. Give yourself an extra. For I've still got 4 turrets, but I've now got 12 guns rather than 8. Woohoo! Or I've got 5 turrets. I've now got 15 rather than 10. Okay, you can't do it with wing turrets. Really can't do it with wing turrets. You're going to have to put them on the centre line, but come on. It's viable. Let's look at this lovely ship, because, of course, this is built to Cuniberti's ideas. And if you haven't heard about Cuniberti, please go to part 1, I think. Power was lit by a dragon of 23 water tube boilers steaming up 4 turbines to develop 32,000 shaft horsepower. 22 knots of speed. So this is not just a battleship, this is a fast battleship for its time. It's got a knot over the British battle line and over pretty much every other battleship in the world. Which makes sense, again. Please note, Italians, very sensibly, don't go for battle cruisers. Why do they need them? What is the Italian strategic objective? Are they planning on going around the world commerce raiding? No. Do they have a far-flung economic empire they have to defend the commerce routes of? No. What do they have to secure? The Mediterranean. Why do you need a battlecruiser for that? In the nicest way, everyone's got to come past you or through you. A fast battleship will cover enough territory. They will have to come to you. Yes, they can come at high speed, but either way, they're going to have to come to you. A fast battleship is far more sensible. So please. The regular battleship is what you need if you're building a mass fleet. You don't want to spend all the extra money. That's why you have the battlecruiser. You have the battlecruiser for doing the high-speed rolls, and then you have the battleship for pounding everything else out. That's what they're for. But if you cannot afford a large fleet, and you, or rather don't need one and can't afford one, and therefore don't need battlecruisers, building fast battleships is a very sensible route to go, because it maximizes the capability of your individual battleships. You might only be able to afford 9 or 10. But if they're 9 or 10 fast battleships, which can actually consistently have a couple of knots to 3 knots advantage over most other battleships. So even though they're slower than battlecruisers, most of the battlecruisers don't want to fight them because, well, let's be honest, they have the armor to stand up to them. And the battleships mostly can't catch them. They're sitting pretty. They can pick when they're going to engage in a fight. Possibly the Germans should have been paying more attention to the Italians. 12-inch guns in 4 triple turrets. And whilst, yes, none of them are super firing, they also have their secondary guns in turrets, which is... it's just beautiful. I love the Dante Alighieri. I don't know why more people weren't studying her at the time. But she's definitely got a very good broadside, and as it's not designed as wing turrets, those turrets, when they're firing, will be firing away from superstructures, which means they hopefully won't damage them or the deck. Brilliant. And look at these fine fellows. Yes, it's the Gangut class. Basically, the Russians copied the Dante Alighieri. Okay, it's fine, but they've got 25 Yarrow boilers that allow the 4 steam turbines to develop 52,000 shaft horsepower. Only have managed that on trials, though. They had very good coal that day, which allowed them to get up to a speed of 24.1 knots. Hello, is this a battleship or a battle cruiser? It's got 4 triple turrets, 12-inch guns. Nicest way, if I was the Germans and I saw that the Russians were building this, I would be crying into my sleep. I have just been outbested by the Russians, who got their asses, their behinds handed to them in the Russo-Japanese War. They have 16 single 4.7-inch guns to deal with any enemy destroyers and torpedo boats. The Kamchatka will not ride again. A single 3-inch AA gun and 4 torpedo tubes. They have a very strong belt. Could be stronger, but again, 12-inch guns. They are designed to hit you hard and hit a lot. So, that is the end of the halfway point in 1909. I hope you've enjoyed this. As I've said, part 2 will be coming out later today, and I will continue with the discussion of the ships that appeared in that were laid down in 1909. That's the figures I'm going with. It's laid down, and when I give those those graphs at the end, it's the ships under construction are considered any which have been laid down, not ordered. They have to have actually been laid down to be counted, and those in service are considered those which have been commissioned. Again, ships which haven't been commissioned, fully worked up, are not really proper ships. Until they're commissioned, they're not in service. I know accountants and politicians might like to count them, but they don't. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you liked. If you did, please do like. Maybe consider subscribing. And if you feel like supporting my research and supporting my work, I have a Patreon. It's always very helpful at the moment, especially with the early career academic market as it is at the moment. And thank you to everyone who's joined Discord and is chatting away there. Thank you. It really is a help. And it's a lot of fun. Thank you. Take care.